Welcome to Revelation Unraveled. I'm your host, William Tapley, also known as the third eagle of the apocalypse and the co-prophet of the end times. The topic for this program is part 2 in our very important series on the decline and fall of the United States and the defeat of our last president, President Barack Obama, as these events are described in Daniel chapter number 11. Let's review some of the important numerology which Daniel uses to explain these future events. And when I say future, I mean the very near future. As I explained in part 1, Daniel breaks up the 45 verses of chapter number 11 into a 444, 666, and 555 verse sequence. Now these first 12 verses are divided into a 444 pattern, and the reason is to indicate Barack Obama, because he's the 44th President of the United States, elected on the 4th of November. Now this 444 pattern is verified in a very interesting manner in the last 15 verses, which are divided into a 555 sequence. Let's look at the middle verses of each of these 5 verse sets. In the exact middle of these first 5 verses, that is verse number 33, Daniel describes 4 items. They shall fall by the sword, by fire, by captivity, and by spoil. In the exact middle of these 5 verses, that is verse number 38, Daniel describes 4 more items: gold, silver, precious stones, and things of great price. In the exact middle of the last 5 verses, that is verse number 43, Daniel describes 4 more items: treasures, gold, silver, and precious things. This 444 pattern, embedded in the 555 pattern, is not accidental. Daniel is letting us know through hidden numerology that the last president of the United States is Barack Obama, and he will be the last king of the South. Now let's see how Daniel enumerates the 6 last kings of the North and the 6 kings of the South. In Daniel chapter 11, the prophet enumerates more than a dozen historical personalities, all of whom have been identified by previous Bible scholars. What other Bible scholars do not understand is the numerological importance of these kings. In the first 5 verses of this set, in part number 1, I mentioned the first king, Darius the Mede, who Daniel does name, and the last ancient king, Alexander the Great. These first 6 kings set up an important 666 sequence. Daniel does this so that we can identify the last king of the North, who is the 6th king, is the premier of Russia, and the last king of the South is the last president of the United States, as I said, Barack Obama. Now in the second 4 verse sequence, Daniel begins describing the kings of the North and the kings of the South. The first king of the South is Ptolemy Soter. Now the first king of the North is not too readily identified, because Daniel says one of his princes shall prevail over him. Now Daniel does not describe him as a king, so we have to read his description to understand who Daniel is talking about. Daniel is talking about Seleucus Nicator. One of his princes shall prevail over him. Therefore he must be stronger than a king. And he shall rule with great power. Again, the description of a king. For his dominion shall be great. Therefore we know that he must be counted in our list of kings. He is the first king of the North. Now in verse number 6, Daniel describes the second king of the south, who is Ptolemy Philadelphus. And the second king of the north who was Antiochus Theos. Now the third king of the south, Daniel describes as a plant of the bud. This is Ptolemy Evergetes. Normally we would say that since Daniel describes him as merely the plant of a bud, then he would not be listed in our list of kings. But later on, Daniel does describe him as a king. Therefore, he is the third king of the south. And later on, we find the third king of the north, who is Seleucus Callinicus. Now, in the last 4 verses of this 444 sequence, we meet the fourth king of the south, who is Ptolemy Philopater, and the fourth king of the north, who is Antiochus the Great. Following the first 12 verses, Daniel divides the next 18 verses of chapter 11 into a 666 where we meet the fifth king of the north, Antiochus Epiphanes, and the fifth king of the south, who is Ptolemy Philopater. Daniel is establishing all this numerology so that we in the end times can determine who the last king of the north and the last king of the south are. In other words, there have been 5 kings of the north, ending up with Antiochus Epiphanes, and 5 kings of the south. Therefore, we need one more king of the north and one more king of the south to verify the 666 pattern, which Daniel has already set up. And of course we know 666 is an evil end times number. The whole reason Daniel goes to such great pains to divide up the last 15 verses into a 555 sequence, and also to establish that there are a 666 sequence as far as the number of kings go and as far as the middle number of verses go, is so that we will understand in the end times that the last king of the north is different than Antiochus Epiphanes, and that the last king of the south is also a new individual. Now, other Bible scholars mistakenly assume that the last king of the north is Antiochus Epiphanes or the Antichrist. He is neither. The last king of the north is the premier of Russia, and the last king of the south is the last president of the United States, Barack Obama. In part 3 of this series, we will take a closer look at all the distinguishing characteristics of the king of the north. And we will also look at the Antichrist, who is described in the last 5 verses of Daniel's chapter number 11. And we will find that the Antichrist defeats both the last king of the north and the last king of the south by enticing them to destroy each other in World War III. Now, if you would like more information, simply write to the address you see on your screen.